So let's start.
Uh,
Yes, anybody, you were saying something?
Anuradha ji,
Bataiye, bataiye.
yeah, I wanted to remind you about the Om chanting thing. So
We'll
you
do that.
asked me to remind me.
Sure, please, please, please. And I think I told Sundareshan also to remind me of something. Sundar?
Anuradha,
Yes.
you asked me to remind you wanted to say something regarding the group. You said you just remind me,
Ah, correct, correct,
just
correct.
wanted to point out that. Thank you.
So I will do that. I will make just these announcements right at the start itself, and then we will go on so that everybody can hear about what I had to say. So one was about the Om. Once we start doing it, I will talk about it. But just about the group, I just wanted to mention that the WhatsApp chat group that we have to think of how we can use it in a way that optimizes everybody's, learning as a group there. Okay, so we just have to make a few decisions there. Like one of the things that I've been saying repeatedly is that since everybody, we have to understand that this level is really a basic level. Okay, so really a beginner's level. So even if we are using Sanskrit, let's try and see if we can use it within the lessons that have been covered. It's a good exercise for those of you who are already well versed with Sanskrit. It's a very good, it's a very good opportunity to try and see how can you tone down your knowledge of Sanskrit to the level of the majority of the group. I'll request to mute. Yeah. So, Sundaresh, can we mute everybody? Okay, I have done that. Now I've just muted all. All right. Huh? So, yeah. So I was saying that, so we have to keep that in mind, the standard of the group, because if there is too much of high flown Sanskrit coming in there, then it can be discouraging for the rest. So we'll try and keep our, the higher level of Sanskrit in control a little bit, but make sentences, but at the level that has been covered in the class. So give practice. Practice is encouraged, but not higher dosages. Okay, that could be a challenge. But sometimes if there is a doubt, it can be answered. Then the other thing was people are saying that sometimes important conversation is getting missed. So I would suggest like the subhashitams. Why am I recommending that you try and identify a subhashitam of your choice? Is because one is that it will give you a little more. One of the things that studying of subhashitas would do is give you the confidence that it is not as difficult as you think it is because the words are familiar, but the grammar needs to be learned. So it is an incentive to learn some more grammar. Then the transliteration from, if you're doing from Devanagari, the transliteration helps you really start appreciating the the nuances of sounds according to letters, and therefore the importance of learning the Devanagari. So those of you who don't know the Devanagari, you will realize very soon that the faster you invest in that, the sooner your own study will be speeding up. Okay, that is the other thing. So I would suggest try and keep your conversations really around these points. So try and share a subhashitam. If there is a little bit of discussion around the subhashitam, one person shares, we'll have maybe one or two subhashitams a day so that we are not overcrowding the chat. Today we've got just too much of conversations happening in every place. So let's see if we can also just be a bit watchful, just a bit mindful. That's all. It's not that I will not say one per day or two per day. It's not a so one. What the other thing is, yeah, it's not about what there's an external imposition about rules and all of that, because then it starts jarring against one's own sensibilities. But what would be nice is for each one to become a little more sensitive about what is happening and see how one can add, to the group with one's conversations or whatever. So yeah, because it's a very adult, it's a group of mainly senior people here. So I mean senior and mixed group. But what I'm saying is that since everybody's an adult here, let's see if we can try and feel what is the right thing rather than having it according to a thing. But there are certain frameworks, and that's how the Indic civilization also works. It gives you frameworks on the basis of which we have the Swadharma. You have your independent option to move around there. So let's start. We'll start formally with the Om and Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Harihi Om Atha. Okay, let's start. Om. Twice more. Om. Om. श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम् अथ I would just like to request Sundareshan to just make a little bit of an announcement on the signing thing, and then I will take it from there. Sundar?
Yeah. I mean, as everyone may be aware that this is a recurring meeting, and since the link is actually accessible to all, we just want to restrict it to folks who are there in the WhatsApp group and who has a login, who has signed up with Zoom.us. So what I would request folks is that if you do not have an account with Zoom, please go ahead and create an account. It's quite simple. Go to zoom.us/sign up and give your birth date to kind of validate your age, and then go ahead and give your full name among other things. It will take only a couple of minutes to actually sign up. So that way we actually know who is I mean, when you log in with the URL, we'll actually get to know who is actually logged in. And chances are that when the Zoom link is passed around, we may actually expose it to somebody who may actually take over the session or something of that sort. So we just want to avoid such incidences, and that's the reason I've kind of enabled sign in during the session. So for now, I think I've disabled it, but hopefully in the before the next couple of sessions, everyone can actually get their login IDs, and then we can re-enable the sign in before we start the Zoom sessions. Thanks.
Thank you, Sundar. Dhanyavadaha. And the other point also was regarding the chats. Don't feel it like, that everybody has to read through all the chats. All right. So just take it easy because, like I said, there's so much coming in. So try and focus on my chat. That's why I'm making mine capital so that you notice that this is coming from her sort of thing. And whichever ones are convenient, because everything is not probably relevant for everybody also. So again, just there is no compulsion to go through all of it. The idea is basically this is more an opportunity for you to practice what you're learning as well. So if you want to just make one or two sentences from what you have learned and maybe ask for help if that is correct or not, things like that. So use this as an opportunity to have a conversation, practice what you're learning. That is the best use of that chat. And even that, not too elaborate, just keep it within that bounds. Okay. So about the Om itself, last time we were looking at the fact that, there was this initially vibration that then the whole spectrum of sound that is covered from R to U. So in this range from R to U, we have the range. And if you pluck it in the middle, then you help everything, all the sounds of the universe to resonate. So what happens is that when you are doing the Om, the O is the middle sound from R to U. So when you pluck it in the center, all of the sounds are neutrally, in a sense, they start vibrating. Okay, and there is this phenomenon of resonance. So, or not resonance, sorry, the entrainment. And entrainment is that if you have metronomes that are, going at different paces, you put it on a certain platform, and you'll see all of them will start going at the same, in the same rhythm. So similarly, when we are listening to sounds, if there is a powerful sound, then the rest of our being sort of follows along in an entrainment and the rest of the vibrations of our being will start resonating with that. So the Om, because it is like a neutral sound, is a bit like I was saying last time, it's like a major reset button for us. Not for any other reason, but the fact that it neutralizes, it has the power to, if it makes sense and if it is correct from a scientific point of view also, it equalizes, it puts all the vibrations on an equilibrium in a sense. and therefore acts like a reset button for our being. So the more we do the Om, the more we are facilitating this neutralization of the noisy structures within ourselves. And therefore, the other beautiful thing about the Om is that the sound Om exists in the universe. Why does it exist? Because if the sum total of all the sounds at the basis is an Om. So usually, like, we try and make the Om, but it is a fantastic exercise to try and receive the Om. So just before you do the Om, if in that moment of silence, you just allow the hearing to open up, the subtle hearing to open up, then you will be able to hear an Om. It could be in your head also, doesn't matter. But you will hear a certain Om and allow yourselves to reproduce that sound. I have been trying it recently and it's quite different. It's quite different than if I'm saying I'm going to do the Om in this way and I'm going to do the Om in that way. That is also possible. So when I invite you to play with the Om, then that is what I'm asking you to do as well. That try and make different formations of your mouth. So you do it like last time Kaushik I think was asking me that. So if you do an how is that different from Om? Is it different from Om? Is that different from Om? All of these sound different, right? And they would have different impacts, but it all depends on what you want to experience. If you're doing an Aum, then it's like you have the range from A to U, you're plucking Aum. So what I say, it's a bit like a buffet of sounds that you're giving with the Om. It's like the maximum spread of the buffet. If you want it like a multivit pill, then you just do the Om. So Om is like your multivit pill. Okay. And if you do that Om, I've got a lot of Sunat people who think Sur is not fully right. That's possible. We cannot the best of singers. But so when you add music to it, music accesses a different zone. It accesses a different space. It opens up a different space in us. So that intonation also, that's why when we do the Sanskrit vowels, there is the notion of intonations in the vowels, because that adds a different kind of frequency to that vibration of the Om that we're doing. So each of these are things that you play with. The other one I would recommend that you try is doing the Om silently. So just with your eyes, so just you can articulate it. So you articulate it, but you don't make the sound. It's quite powerful. The other one that you can try doing is that as you breathe in, you do the Om. So, Om. Okay, that it's quite different. The other one I'll recommend you that you try is to whisper the Om. So, the whisper is another important practice in the spiritual tradition because it is neither sukshma nor is it sthula. It's in between the worlds. And that seems to open up a certain range within us. It opens up, it touches a different dimension of our being. So try out these different varieties. But what I would also recommend is when we are doing the Om in the class, it's a nice idea to try it as fully as possible. We are not always accustomed to doing it in that way. So when you're doing the Om, if I can do a demonstration, so you can do it like Om. Feel the resonance as much as possible in your being and see what that does. Again, so play with it, find what works for you, when it works for you, because it would vary with your experiences. All right. So that was about the Om and the fact that the different ways of doing the Om will have slightly different shades of impact on us. It's important just to understand physiologically what is happening, and then you will start appreciating the different kinds of experiences they correspond to. The other point that we had touched upon last time was I had talked to you about the fact that at the end of the day, this whole game of the Vedas, I'll share a screen and very quickly I'll try and just revise that a bit, is the fact that we are at the physical level, it's very dense vibrations. At an emotional level, it is a little loose. At a mental level, it's a little more spaced out. At a Vijnanamaya, it's more spaced out. At the Anandamaya, it's more spaced out and completely unconditional. But we are generally in this, and it's all interconnected. Okay, so we are unfortunately a little more in that. These levels are pretty much untouched. Okay, so that is what happens. And now the fact is that the underlying energy is in everything the same, so it is there, but it gets veiled up. Okay, so when it is in this form, it is completely lost. It's there, but it's completely, and this is what I refer to as darkness. So when that single simple vibration got enmeshed in many other sounds, then we started making noisy, we started having noisy structure. So the whole purpose of creation was, how do you bring light? This corresponds to more light. This corresponds to more space. This corresponds to expansion. So I had talked about the fact that the Vedic story is about two movements that we do. One is about promoting light or darkness. So every single act of ours, every single thought of us, because those are the three outputs: our thoughts, our acts, and our speech. These are the three conceived outputs. So I'll just mention that here. So output is thoughts. So again, from subtle to gross, speech and actions. Okay, these are the three outputs we have. So each of these outputs had to either, they're in any case, they're doing, either they're contributing towards more clarity or they're contributing towards more darkness. Either they're contributing towards expansion, which is this one, or they're contributing towards constriction or restrictions or contractions. Okay, so this is the choice we have, and I put it in the context of the Vedic story, where there was light and it wanted to have another, so it had darkness. But how did it create this darkness? It withdrew itself, so darkness emerged. But to give stability to the darkness, a bit of the light plunged into that darkness. Who was that conscious light that took the first plunge? It is Agni. Why Agni? Because the very nature of Agni is to burn upwards. Agre nayati iti Agni. So it always goes upwards. What does it represent psychologically? Psychologically, it represents the original will, the divine will. Why divine? It comes from the root div, which means light. So the devas are nothing but light beings that are collaborating with the human soul or the human being to help bring more light in the darkness. That's the Vedic story in summary. Okay, but within that, there are the three stories I talked about, the three images. The first image is of light, of the forces of the light and the forces of darkness. The forces of light are the devatas. So they are the conscious beings who are seeking for that rare human soul, like Sri Aurobindo says, that is completely invested in trying to bring light. So it's a full collaborator. So there are these two armies, the armies of light and the armies of darkness. Because when the darkness was created, it had its reality. It had its reality in the senses that darkness also, it is an absence of light, but it is a conscious absence of light. So there are forces that are trying to preserve the darkness. So how do we, or whom do we side with in that battle? That was the first story of the battlefield. The second image of the Vedic story is that of the yajna. What is the yajna? The yajna is nothing but the Vedic rishis' recognition that the whole universe is in a process of exchange. At every moment, we are giving our energies to something and we are receiving something. So this action reaction that Newton talked about is a very simplistic I won't say simplistic, but I would say it is a very fundamental principle that is applicable at all levels. Okay. And so just that much it would be suffice to say that therefore we are giving our energies to something and we are getting. So the Yajna asked, we were to ask three questions there. The first one is, what are we offering, or like, why are we doing this offering? So whom are you offering to? Why are you offering? And what are you offering? So are we offering to the light? The not so good news is that if you're not consciously doing that, by default, we are in the side of the darkness. So there is the need to consciously offer to the light. The second one is, why are we offering? So if I'm offering, if I want to get knowledge, I can get knowledge because I want fame, which indirectly is the realm of the dasyus, or there is a specific term known as pani. The panis are one of our biggest enemies, says the Vedas. Why are they considered as the enemies? Because it is, the concept is, it comes from the root pan, which means to barter and exchange. So there are those forces that are constantly engaged. If I do this, then I will get that. If I do this, then I will get that. If. The moment we get into this if then kind of a mentality, then we somehow move away from doing things because that is the thing to be done. So this Shreyas Prayas, that which is the right thing to be done and that which is pleasurable to be done. Okay, so the question one has to answer is, why am I doing it? So the more our why is from a disengaged, it doesn't have baggages around it, the more powerful it will become, the less it will be embroiled in the darknesses of the Dasyu world. Okay. And the other thing is, if anybody has a question, feel free to stop me, or if I'm going too fast also, feel free to, indicate that, could you please slow down, and I will respond. Okay. The third point that we have, and then the third question is, what are we offering? So the Vedas recommends three things. It says that the first thing you have to do is to light the Agni. So in life, in order to do anything, one has to first light that fire, that Agni, to have the willpower to do something. Why do we need to light the willpower? Because that is what will take us upwards. That is what will keep burning. It will keep inspiring us to go forward. And what does Agni do? Agni helps to melt the opaque butter-like buddhi that we all have. So when it melts that, then the brain, the intelligence gets more and more translucent or transparent, and that translucency is captured by the word ghritam. Ghr means to shine. So that substance is known as ghritam because it has that translucence and it shines. But it is not limited by that. So psychologically, ghritam represents illumined thinking. So that, to that willpower, you have to add ghritam, that illumined thoughts. More illumined the thoughts, greater the clarity, greater the willpower. And that willpower is what will take us truth. So how do we say what we want to do? Because then we are bringing alignments in our system, and that is what will help us go forward. The final ingredient that is recommended in the Vedas, there are many others, but the important ones is the soma. The soma comes from the root su, which means to press out. So the more we know how to press out the bliss of existence, or the bliss of why we want to do things. So when we have this discussion on happiness anywhere, they will say that nothing in the world is undertaken because, or nothing in the world is undertaken if it is not for happiness. At the bottom line, you will see there will be the quest for happiness in everything that is undertaken. And but that when we decide to do something, somewhere within us there is an image that if I manage, then there will be a joy in completing that, in accomplishing that task. But then when there are so many obstructions that come in, sometimes we forget why we undertook it and we give it up. So this is a very good thing also for the Sanskrit study, because there are just so many reasons that, so many impelling reasons, so many compelling reasons that can come in the way of achieving this, of acquiring a certain proficiency. So those are like these multiple obstacles. But if we know that if I can get a certain degree of knowledge of this language, if I have a certain mastery, the access you will get is, I can assure you, you will never regret the kind of wealth you will be exposed to with just a sufficient amount of Sanskrit. and then the learning is infinite. But if you need to you need to toil, you need to struggle through that first layer. So whatever the impediments are, if you are ready to tell yourself, come what may, I'm going to keep going, I will just, this time I will get to the end of this course, this intermediate course, then the benefits will be enormous, and you will have a lot of independence with the subject as well. Okay, so soma means to know how to press out and taste the essence of why did we start, that delight of undertaking a task. If we know how to put that into the ahuti, that the purna ahuti they do, no, with the pouring of that, then our we become unstoppable, because then come what may, one will keep going forward. Huh? So that delight of or rather being drunk with the delight of our task is the most potent way of ensuring that any task is accomplished. This works at an individual level, this works at a collective level. So if one can inspire a group to taste, even to conceptualize that, and then to keep them motivated, the task of the leader is accomplished. Okay, so this was the yajna. So these are the reasons. And then what do they say? That if you're able to do this, you will be rewarded with the different kinds of bounties. You will get the cows. What are the cows? The word go comes from the root gu, which means the ray of light. Okay, it has also, it means literally the cow, but it also comes from the root gu, which means a ray of light. So when we are offering our energies to the higher forces of light, we will be rewarded with spiritual illuminations. Right? We will be rewarded with spiritual illuminations. You will get horses. Horses are ashwa. They're the forces, the spiritual forces that you will get. You will get children, newer and newer realizations. You will get gold, purity of experience. All of these bounties will be made available the more we perform the yajna to the devatas. Okay, so this is the larger story of the second image of the Vedas. And just with the go, it's very interesting. So this is the beauty of the Sanskrit language again, that we tend to get caught up only with the secondary level of meaning that the word gets. So when we talk of Govinda or Gopala, we automatically associate these words to an image of Krishna, because he's called that. But why is Krishna called that? Why was Krishna tending to the cows in the first place? Was he just a cowherd or what? But when you understand that Go means light, Gopala is one who nourishes or nurtures, one who looks after the lights within. It acquires a completely different meaning. Govinda, Bhaja Govindam. We were talking of Bhaja Govindam. Bhaja Govindam. What is this? Vindate means to go looking for, to seek. So go seeking for this light. So Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudhamate. So Bhaja Govindam. So be immersed in that quest for the light. Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudha Mati. So what is this Mudhatvam? What is this Mudha? Mudha is nothing but this kind of, Mudha is nothing but this, get the red in, this kind of grossness, that happens in our being, this kind of density that we acquire because of lack of light. And this density is what is also known as the tamas. This is the tamasika stage. Okay, the tamasika stage of being. Okay, but in between these two, so I hope this much is clear, that when Govindam Bhaja Mudhamati, this is thick, this is dense. How does that denseness and thickness and darkness happen? When we get rigid with our patterns, we get rigid with the ways of our being. All of this rigidity is a complete contrast to the fluidity of the spirit. The fluidity of the spirit is not about, it's not a static truth. This was also a discussion I had with somebody. This with Varaduji actually. This fluidity of our being is not a static truth. Every moment that truth is changing. And that change of every moment to moment change is the rhythm. So the whole task of sadhana, of yoga, is how do we find that rita, the right thing to do. Okay, this rightness, and therefore the notion of the rita chit, the consciousness that is full of this notion of the right. In the Yoga Sutras, they talk of Ritam Bhara Prajna, that intelligence that knows the right of the moment. When we lose that right because of our own rigidities and fixities, then we are moving away from the qualities of the spirit. It's a very what do you say? It's a very tricky kind of a game, this one, because we have been pushed into form to experience the human life and human experience, and the so we've been pushed into form and we are being pulled to realize the spirit in the form. So Brahman is not about suddenly disintegrating and becoming energy once again. Brahmanness in our being is to discover the space in between the matter of who we are. And how do we retain that flexibility, that fluidity in our emotions, in our thoughts, in our physical being? That's why all the forms of yoga were important. And it's in that context that the mantra yoga becomes so important, because when we are doing the mantras, we are allowing our rigid structures to become more pliable, more receptive to the subtler sound patterns which resonate with the cosmos. Okay, so I was telling you about the Mudhamati and the Govinda, and also the fact that the Mudha is this tamasic part. We are still on the second image, but I'm trying to also get to explain to you about the different kinds of light formations and darknesses that are within us, because I touched upon this last time. The second one that we are talking is in between these two stages, where there is some degree of fluidity, but there is also a doership. There is a sense of I am doing, and that is what corresponds to the Rajasic thing. So for me, it was quite fascinating to understand Rajasika. I haven't done the R's and all correctly here, but it's Rajasika. So Tamasika, Rajasika. Okay, so it was very fascinating for me to be able to understand the three gunas through vibrations, and to understand the corresponding psychological and emotional patterns that that create these different qualities within us. So Rajasika is when there is that action oriented. So the person is not entrusted, but there is a strong sense of I am the doer. In a Tamasika context, it is more the world which will tell you what has to be done. And there's a lethargy to move, there's a lethargy to change, all of that. And then comes the more desirable condition, which is the Sattvika condition, where there is a natural alignment. And this natural alignment with the tunes of the cosmos, if I may say, is what is Sattvika. A Sattvika Swabhava, somebody with the Sattvika nature, is one who is more in terms, Sattvika, yeah, is one who is more in the flow of being an instrument rather than a doer. So where there's a lot more quietness, and because it's not that one doesn't do things, but the source of the doer is not the limited mind. It's not this confused mind. It's not this confused mind here, which is the doer of things, because this is caught up in its own stories. It is a more enlightened, a more receptive mind that does that which needs to be done. So it thinks what has to be thought, it speaks what it has to be spoken, it does what has to be done as a receiver of adeshas. So it's a completely different way of existing. So all of this together, we understand, and this is the choice we have. So the Vedic story tells us that this is really the choice we have. The third image that it talks to us about is the journey. So we are all on the journey. There is no option. So we are on the journey. And in that journey, we have three ways of acting. You can either act, so karma. You can either not act, akarma, or you can act otherwise. Karma, akarma, anyatha karma. Okay, so three ways of acting. Now, what are those? What do we mean by that? Each of them is determining our action. So either I act according to the way I need to, or I think is the right one. My choosing not to act is also an action. It's because we are not static ever. There is no question. Everything is in a movement. Everything is moving out there. So we are in movement in any case. So even inaction is an action. And the other choice is to act otherwise. Now, this is a topic that I might take up down the line about the whole notion of karma, samskara, and what are the samskaras that we're doing when we are into the study of Sanskrit in the spirit of the Sanskrit language. I keep repeating the spirit of the Sanskrit language because I think that is the key to uncovering the deeper beauty of this language. When we are caught up with Sanskrit as the just another language, another tool of communication or a tool of access to knowledge, we are not necessarily receptive at a certain level about the multiple dimensions that this language can offer us. So when we study, and therefore when I say that if you're touched by the spirit of the language, there are many uncalculated benefits that we can naturally reap. Whereas if one is just doing it mechanically, we can be as mundane in everything that we do, we say, and all, although we are in touch with gold. So it's a bit like that. So that was about this. Okay. So the third one is that just that about a journey and the fact that we are always going from lower peaks to higher peaks. And what the Veda says is that the choice for us as an individual is to be the word Aryan. So who are we as Aryans? As Aryans, it comes from the root Ar. And the root Ar, Vikarma, Anyatha Karma, same as Vikarma, is Anyatha Karma, Vikarma. Yes, it could also be that. Yes. I'm just looking at some answers here. Guru. We are often told that Guru is one who removes darkness. Yeah, that is also true. Gukaro Andhakarastvai Rukaro Tannivartaka. Yamini ji is saying that. It's very interesting because the word gu also has the sense of the light. Huh? It means a ray of light. So I'll have to search that further to see this connection is. Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying that where was I? Anybody? Where was I?
The choice is yours. Arya.
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 Arya. Dhanyawad. So I was saying that with the term Arya, it comes from the root Ar. Ar has two meanings. Ar is either in karshane or it means to plow, to cultivate, or Ar can mean to fight. So Sri Aurobindo says that an Aryan was a cultivator and a fighter, a warrior. A cultivator of what? A cultivator of the inner soil to sow the seeds of divinity. Okay, to sow the seeds of light, basically. And an Aryan was also the warrior who was ready to fight for overcoming their own weaknesses and forever trying to grow towards the greater self of within. Okay, so this was the original concept of the Aryan in the Vedas, and somebody's sound has come on. So this was the original notion of the Arya. And Sri Aurobindo says that these forces of darkness were also very important because they were there to remind us of our limitations. So this is a very nice image that we are all like caves, and in the caves there are many entry points, and there are many dead ends, and there are many pathways. Now every time we have a dark spot in us, and we have a certain problem, it becomes an opportunity to enter in one of those smaller caves and to discover the light there. So that particular cave gets enlightened, but the whole being is full of so many caves that one has to gradually enlighten the entire stuff within. Okay, so that is all about the Vedic story, and I'll just move on to the whole thing of the light and the sounds. So we had the different sounds that were there originally. So that original Om that then got fragmented into the primary sounds, the A, the E, and the U. So the human vocal system gets divided into these three parts. And I will stop sharing and share my PPT with you. So they divided the human vocal system into these parts. I might extend by another 10 minutes if everybody's fine with that. All right, so can you see that? So they divided the human vocal system into these few palatals. So A is a sound of the guttural, E is a palatal sound or a talu. So kanthya, talu, and oshtya. Okay, the labials. So if you have the range, it was divided like if A and U, then it was divided in the palatal region there. And then they realized that there were two other points that were very important, which was the cerebral or the murdha and the dental or the dantya. So this region was again subdivided into two parts. Okay. And each of these has a certain benefit physiologically. So when they did the vowels, they acknowledged a few things. So the first is that the place of pronunciation, so for the alphabet, the place of pronunciation is important. And therefore the sparsha, where are you touching? Then the duration of the vowel is important. And the third one is the intonation, which was important. So each of this, and the breath. These are the important things that were taken into consideration. So the vowels, for example, the primary three vowels are said to have 18 variations. So you have a, single beat, a, and you have the pluta. So rasva, dirgha, pluta. And where does that get used? In the Vedas, you have you have this longer intonation that is there. And so that's the pluta that happens. And you also have the nasalized or the non-nasalized. So you can do which opens up another region in the brain. You can also have the intonations, the three, anudatta, udatta, anudatta, and swarita. Okay, so you have the three, which are the three intonations. So the first three vowels have the 18 permutations and combinations of these three. So you have, let's just do the first ones. And like you've seen on the videos, I would prefer doing it on my fingers. So I recommend that everybody does it with me. So a, e, u, u. So Asain, I'd like everybody to do this because this will also help with the sandhi when you're learning the sandhi. So u, u, then r, behind the teeth, behind on and just below the palate. Sorry, what am I saying? Below the murdha. Then behind the teeth. So this one is an interesting one because it's a the longer one tends to go towards the r somehow. Okay, and then we have these are the main sounds, and then you have when you go from a to e. So the sound that you will get in I think linguistically it's also called the diphthong. It's the middle sound that you get. So when you go from a to e, you get I. So the A is the middle sound. You slow it down and you get the I. Then you have the A and U. The middle sound is O. You get the O and OW. And then ah. The anuswara is an interesting sound. It's a nasal. It's the neutral nasal in a sense. And therefore there are different ways in which it gets pronounced. So some would, in Bengal regions, we would tend to do ang. In the Maharashtrian region, they would tend to do ang. In the south, they will tend to do some in the north, they would tend to do an a little more. Okay, but when we do aha, that's how you pronounce it in the vowels. So why are there 16 vowels? Because it takes into consideration all the 16 petals of the Vishuddha chakra. The throat chakra is associated with all these 16 vowels. So there is a certain perfection in the arrangement of these sounds. So although l and r are seldom used and the long r is also seldom used, they're all retained in the alphabet in order to maintain that completeness of the sounds, the purnata of the vowel system. Astu. So I recommend that you repeat it after me once. A, I, U, U, R, R, L, L, A, I, O, Ah. I say this. Ah is a de-stressing value of the Sanskrit language. The more you do, physically also there's a lot of the, yeah, I would say the pent up prana that can get a release through that. Okay, and then these three primary sounds then fragment into the 50 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. Okay, not the all in all, it is the 50. So these would fragment into the next 33 letters of the consonants that are there. And the consonants are actually a matter of touch in the vocal system, accompanied by different vowels. So the first ones are k, kh, g, gh, nga, all in the throat. So would you like to do that once? Just a logic there is that the first sound is a touch sound. So k, so see if you can break down the k even more. So k, with the breath. K. The next one is sound touch. G, g. Breath. G. Nasal. Ng. Moving on to the palatals. Ch. Ch. And ch also happens if you're putting your tongue down there. Then the position is reached naturally. Ch. Ch. J. J. Nya. The tongue stays exactly in the same place. Next, the murdha sounds. T, th, d, dh, n. If you're not very sure, I recommend that you touch the tip of your, the center of the palate with the tip of your index finger. And then touch your tongue there. T, th, d, dh, n. The same place. And then the dental. T, th, d, dh, n. The labials. P, H, B, Bh, M. So one of the things you observe is that just reciting these many letters, by reciting these many letters, we followed the order in which the sound comes out of the human vocal system. The next letters are going back to the vowels. If you have E and then when we had to E, it became A. So Gana, Isha, Ganesha. Now if you have E and Asti, Atra, Astyatra. So you see where the Sandhi starts coming into play. Then you have, so E to is Ya, R to is R, L to is L, U to is V. So again, you're going back into the system. And then you have the three sibilants. So you have Sh, Talavya Sh, Sh, S. And then you come back to the throat chest region. H. Okay. Now, we have just recited the Sanskrit alphabet, but simultaneously, so many things have happened. For one, we have done a very systematic touch of the key points of our vocal system, which in turn corresponds to the stimulation of those regions in the brain. Why do I say that that is important? And where does Sanskrit, I mean, I would actually say that Sanskrit scores above Sanskrit and Indian languages, score above the European languages. Because when you talk about, if you spoke only in English, English has the talavya and then it has a sound where if you have the teeth, it touches on top there. So it's not a dental nor is it a murdha sound, it's in between the t. That's why they don't have the dentals nor do they have the cerebrals. That's why they can't say shanti. They would say shanti. If you hear even Deva Premal and some of those singers would do Namo Bhagavate, because they do not have a t at all. And when I make my foreign friends do this, you can actually feel the difference. Why is it important? Because you are feeling the difference. If I say shanti versus shanti, The experience is completely different. Okay, what happens to those who only speak French and other Latino languages like Spanish or Portuguese? The entire region from the palate to the teeth would never have been stimulated if you only spoke that language, which means that physiologically those parts in the brain don't get stimulated. We can forget the fact that our breath is used so much in the Sanskrit language. Normally we breathe and therefore we don't breathe and we are not. But our breath is seldom taken into consideration with every utterance we make. So with Sanskrit, we are literally, this language demands us to be supremely mindful, to hold our attention with every single utterance that you are making. Every single utterance in Sanskrit is fully conscious of the mechanism of the sound production. It is fully conscious of the effect of the sound that is being produced. What do I mean by that? If I just quickly go to the next one, and this is something that we'll revise also tomorrow when we meet, is that each of these letters are associated to the different petals of the different chakras. So the Vishuddha, the throat chakra, has the 16 vowels. The heart chakra or the Anahata has the next 12 letters. So it's very interesting. It's not ka ka ga ga nga cha 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 nya. It goes to nya ta tha, and then Manipura, the navel chakra. So that has the next 10 letters are there, and then the Swadhisthana has the next 6. The Mooladhara has the 4, and then the last 2 are up the Ajna. So if you are just reciting the Sanskrit alphabet, energetically, you are spiraling down the energy centers, literally. And then, woof, you do a boost when you hit sham, sham, sam, hum, sham. So it literally is like activating, and woof, it takes it all back to the headquarters, head office in the Ajna. And that's where the pineal gland, so each of these chakras are connected to our endocrinal system, and there are glands that are associated to it. So recitation of the Sanskrit alphabet is also the stimulation of these different chakras within our being. It's a stimulation at a very subtle level of the different glands, though, of course, the endocrine system and the different glands. But very interestingly, the different planets, when you're doing astrology, there's a chart known as the Sarvato Bhadra, where the planets are associated with these letters. So the resonance that happens with the utterance of these letters is happening at a macrocosmic and microcosmic levels simultaneously. So if you just think of it, if you just think of how such an interrelationship would have been possible, what was the way in which these connections were understood and established? It becomes like an incredibly adbhuta, like unprecedented. Somebody had asked about wow, it's the adbhuta, unprecedented. That's when you do a wow. The psychology of the wow is this hasn't happened before. That's why there is even physiologically it's the first time, and then everything becomes common, and then the neural patterns are all formed, and then you don't have the same wow factor again. With Sanskrit, there is this constant wowness about it because everything is so beautiful. I'll tell one more and then I'll stop. Like today, Sachin was asking me about the word sakha. So sakha meaning the friend. So we were thinking of the etymology of it, and you realize that sakha comes from sa and kha. Kha means space, sa means along with. So the one you share common spaces with is your friend. So very interesting again. And how do you make sakha into sukha? The relationship of sukha means excellent spaces. So how do you ensure that the sakhaness of your friendship has excellence as well into it? So, I mean, yeah, like I said, every place you can have. So what I'll do is I'll pause here and I'll maybe just take some questions if anybody has, and then we can close shortly. Sound?
Anu, what is the madhyama there? You talked of para, pashyati, and vaikhari.
Pashyanti. Pashyanti is
Pashyanti.
seeing.
Yeah, para, pashyanti, and vaikhari. What is madhyama there?
Madhyama is is the medium through which that sound is getting translated. Just one second.
Okay. Okay.
I will, if I draw it out for you, or if I go back to the drawing.
Yes. Yes.
Let me see if I can go back to that whiteboard, if it has retained it for me. I think, there. So para is the beyond, okay? This, I'll do it with another color. So the para, this is an untainted level. It's unconditioned. That's important to understand. That at the para level, everything is in its unconditioned ideal. Not just unconditioned, it's also in its ideal, because that's where, because it is unconditioned, also it is the ideal. Huh? That's where things are in their optimum possibility. Okay. And therefore, the blueprint of everything, the moment something is created, because it is being created by an unconditioned intelligence, the moment it embarks into creation, it conceives of the best. Then what happens is that Pashyanti is happening at this level, really, where the individual is looking at it. So there is a looking, the seeing of that through the lens of the mind. But this lens is either it is sattvika or rajasika or tamasika. So depending on where it is, it will determine the degree of its clarity of the original. All right. And therefore we know that if it is sattvika, it has the most transparent. It has the chances of what it is seeing is uncorrupted. So the degrees of corruption increases with the degrees of tamasikata. And then the madhyama. So when there is a seeing, so the idea is always to go from the subtle to the gross, to manifestation, because the purpose of existence is manifestation. So when you are seeing it, then we become mediums of its manifestation. So already in the first place, whether the seeing happens because we choose to see it or because we are allowed to see it, it's huge already. That difference is huge. Do we see something because I saw it, or do we see something is because we were allowed to see it? So if we realize that there is a lot of allowing to see us that happens, then it is this mind that is at work. Okay, it is this mind that is at work. The moment I think I am the seer, then there is more of a rajasic thing. But then what happens once you see, then there is a need to translate it. That translation, this is the madhyama. And what is happening in the madhyama, if the medium through which it is going is dense and dark, then the distortions are infinite. If the medium through which it is going is less noisy, then like in two towers, if there is less of a storm, then the signal is more clearly received. Then there is a greater degree of clarity, and if there is even lesser degree of disturbance, then the clarity is much higher. And then you have the Vaikhari. This is the Vaikhari, it's the output. Okay, so we can even look at it coming from this end. You can either look at top down, or you can look at it from a horizontal plane, from this plane. So this could be the vertical plane, this is the horizontal plane. There is this sound that is coming. Initially it is clear, then it gets more noisy, and then it gets really noisy and it's out. So the task is, how do we ensure that all of this remains unnoisy? So that in our thoughts there is less distortion, in our speech there is less distortion, and in our actions there is less distortion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That's the Vaikhari.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
You talked about the Anandamaya being dynamic.
Yes.
You said it's not static.
Yes.
And that's, for me, that's kind of mind-blowing, because I always thought I had this one eternal truth to look up to. And so when you say, and also if it is dynamic, then how does one know the rhythm to be in sync with it? If it keeps changing, how do we know? How do we intuit that?
So one thing, if I may, is that because it is in movement. You see, we are in manifestation.
Mm.
So because that being chose to move from being to becoming, but in the becoming, it retained the quality of its being.
Mm. Mm.
So at the Anandamaya Kosha,
Mm.
there is a universality about it, and that's maybe what we associated with the static component.
Mm.
But the expression of that Ananda is through a dynamic medium.
Right. Right.
And therefore, how do we start knowing it? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So how do we do it? How do we stop? Chitta vritti. Chitta here would imply all of this. It is a combination of the entire vibratory pattern,
Mm.
which is mainly guided by the mental thoughts, etc. So
Right.
when we are able to contain that, to control that, when that has become still,
Mm.
then the reflection happens.
Mm.
The intuition, the connection to the sound is more direct just by the stilling of the being. Why? Because there is always a wish from the top to manifest itself. All we need to do is open up from the bottom to receive it.
Right.
So the quietening of the being is extremely, and that's where the mantra tradition, that's where the whole Sanskrit thing becomes so important, because and that's why they say in the Kali Yuga, the mantra practice is the source of liberation,
Right.
because the Kali Yuga is an age of noise. It's an age of anrita, because we have lost the ideas. So we are constantly groping in the dark for everything.
Mm. Mm.
We have multiple mirrors that are trying to present themselves. So that's why in an age like this, you can have fake news. We've got so much of fake news that we don't know what the real thing is.
Right. Right.
There's an abundance of anrita. So this is also again a very important idea in the Indic tradition, that we don't have the notion of sin in that particular sense of the sin that is there.
Mm.
The concept of sin, or the equivalent in the Vedas, is anritam,
Right.
which means that instead of being here, I am here. Instead of being here, I am here. So the graph that I draw is all like that. And therefore, it's not a permanent problem. Because if I have gone off track, all I need to do is come back to track.
Right.
So there's a lot of hope in this,
Right.
in this worldview, that doing something wrong is never the end of it, or we are never damned in that sense. We are damned to the extent that if I'm taking the wrong road and my petrol is over, I would have missed reaching home.
Mm. Mm.
So that real choice between the my way or the highway.
Right.
We are always taking the my way because I think that road looks good, I think that is better.
Mm. Mm.
Sorry, I've lost my way. So we are always taking the my way because we have forgotten what the highway, we don't have the roadmap of the highway.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, so but when we take the my way, it's not wasted. I mean, there is experience to be had.
Yeah.
But if if it is time to experience, then sometimes there is time lost. I mean, but that's part of it. That's probably what the soul chose.
Mm. Mm.
That's why this whole notion of swadharma, and that those were the three other points that I had added last time, was the idea of satyam, ritam, and brihat. That there is a truth, there is the right, and there is a consequence of brihat, which is the vast. So if there is a highway and I'm riding on that highway, I will get home fastest.
Right.
Okay. And what happens as a result? I will be held. So with the story of the glove, I need to know the contour of my hand. I wear a glove that fits that, and the work I will do is of the best kind. If I do that, my hand is held in the best way possible, and that is dharma. So when the Indic civilization put a premium of dharma, all they were saying is that if try to connect to the highest ideal and the practice of that ideal.
Right.
And within the larger frameworks of different dharmas, the notion that each one has come here for a purpose. Your dharma is not my dharma. So swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. So I have come here, my soul has, see, nature is extremely smart. She never duplicates her efforts.
Mm.
She has made every experiment an invaluable experiment. And that's why when people commit suicide and all, it's a tremendous wastage of nature's incredible hope in the creation of a life.
Mm.
And just to live up to that should be the light that allows us to overcome all difficulties. Because she will never give us the circumstances that is greater than our potential to grow beyond it. Never.
Mm.
When things are, we tend to fall short of our own potential, and that's when we give up basically. So anyway, just very beautiful. So the dharma and the idea of swadharma. So each of us has a particular note. So from a music point of view, each of us has our own scroll. We have to connect to that original one and play it in tune.
Mm.
That is what it is.
Okay. Anuradha, I have another question.
Yeah, I'll maybe take one.
I'm Bhranti. You said Tamasika is all about what the world is telling us to do, and Rajasika is I am the doer, I am doing. But then Satvika is also the same. I am only doing in Satvika also, right?
So now this is the very interesting thing. So, and that is where this whole idea becomes. So if you can see my cursor here, all right. So normally so it all depends on who the I is. So normally the I that we associate ourselves with is what we write with a small s. This I has its limitations. So the I that we associate ourselves with has a certain form. It has a preference of I look like this, I talk like that, I like this, I don't like that. And the moment we have these different lenses, we create a certain, we create various kinds of filters on our mind screen.
Okay.
So when we have these various filters and we need to act, if there is a green light, we might see it red because of those multiple filters. So when we have a tamasika eye or a rajasika eye, those filters are multi-layered. There are many colors on that filter.
Okay.
In the sattva, those filters have been removed. Not 100%, but those filters have been thinned out to a great extent.
Okay.
So and to remove those filters, one already has to do the work on oneself as to who am I, what is my swadharma, why am I here? Who is really the doer? Am I the doer? That in itself is an illusion because I am being made to do things whatever I do.
Right.
I am doing, but from a different source of action.
Right.
And in terms of this image, and that's why the Shraddha and the surrender becomes so important. Because in this image, why do I, instead of the rhythm, why am I at this point? Because I think I need to be there. Why am I at this point? Because I think I should. Most of us are functioning through the head. And we need to do that. And we think we need to. How many of us say if a decision, if we are faced with the decision, how many of us would just be quiet and say, yeah, that is the thing to be done? We are always in a state of, I don't know, maybe this is the right thing. I think this. Even if you listen to our language, we will say, I think this is the right thing. And I think this is the right thing is already an indication that we are not functioning from an intuitive, from a knowing part, basically.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I have a question, if you don't
yes,
mind.
Last one. Yes, Tyagaraji.
Yeah, in Sanskrit, vowels A and O are absent. Is there any reason? Like A means short A, then short O are absent. The reason?
We don't have a short A. I don't know if I can say it's a reason as such, but if you just look at the phonetic combination, the phonetics of it is that it is when you're going I. So the range, the A seems to be a little longer.
No, ninka avalledu class.
Somebody's mic is on. Could you please mute your mics, the others? So the A that is there, I think it's just because it's a combination of the A and E. That fact of it being a combination of two vowels is probably one reason why it's long, but I don't know more than that. So it's interesting that the Tamil has the A.
We can explore maybe.
Ah.
We can explore perhaps in future.
Yes, I'll take the
one
last one,
question.
then we'll close. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Bharti ji.
Yeah.
Bharti ji can't hear you.
So, we were looking at all the. Oh, we were moving from the consonants. The consonants move from the and they end at the lips, right? The pa pa ba bum is the labial.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but with the vowels, the methodical movement of, so we start from A, which is the throat, and then E is the palatal, but then U becomes labial. So I was just trying to.
So it's just that if you are trying to divide up the range, so they first divided it in the middle, in the sense that they have done the range is A, E, U. So if you see Kantya, Talu, Oshtya. So it is almost like dividing the range. So these are your primary colors. So that's what I say. It's a bit like the primary colors. And then you have the secondary colors, which are the R and the L. It also could be in terms of the usage, the extent of usage. But the R is a very important place because it is where you have the two energy meridians in Qigong that intersect. So the touching of the R is doing tremendous, again, energy work of the body. But I think that is, I mean, that would be my guesswork, that it's the larger, the recognizing of the range and simply making the things and then subdividing it into places which are more relevant in terms of what they are doing in the body.
Okay, thank you so much.
And
That
then
does
you have the
clarify.
permutation and combinations, which what would be great is if between today and tomorrow you can just try and literally feel what might be happening in the brain if you're doing k, kh, g, g, and then you have the different vowels ka, ki, ku, ke, kha, ki, ku, ke. So just play with that a little bit, ga, gi, gu, ke. So the entire range, this range with all the vowels, all the shades are being explored. Then you come up and all the shades are being explored, and then you come up and all the shades are being explored. It's something.
Thank you so much. That does clarify a lot.
Thank you. Astu. I've got some comments here and then we'll close now.
Dhanyavada.
Dhanyavada. Sanskrit Nati is so meaningful and each of the letters has meaning. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Bahu Dhanyavada. So we can close. We'll just close with an Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu 3 times and Shanti Shanti. So, chalatu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.